3.5-liter V8, 641 horsepower, and a top speed of 221 miles per hour. We are talking about the Nissan R390. Welcome to cars you've never heard of. Now, the R390 is rear-wheel drive with a 6-speed sequential transmission, and the block is a magnesium block, alloy heads with 4 valves per cylinder. Never heard of that in my life. Now, the design for this car comes from the Jaguar XJR15, the old Le Mans car. This is due to the fact that they had the exact same designer. They kind of stole him. This car was not brought around for no reason. Nissan initially had really good luck with their Godzilla, tearing up the touring car races and beating everything in its class. So they figured it's time to move up. Now, with how fast technology was progressing at the time, they had to make this car extremely quick. And they did. It's even quick for GT1 standards. What they did come up with was a car that has a low center of gravity, amazing aero, and most importantly, it was fast. Now, to compete in Le Mans, it's very important you have to have a consumer variant of the car. For a guy like Eric Kamas, this would be a dream come true, but unfortunately, they only made one. But more on him later. The road version of this car had a higher ride, a lighter suspension, and was detuned to 550 horsepower. But they have BBS wheels, baby. Ooh. But with such little time, how did they do it? In 1995, they started out using their inline 6 motor, but that just wasn't fast enough. But with such little time, they had to figure out something. So they dropped back to 1989 and they stole the V8, the iron block V8 from that car and decided to revise it into the magnesium block 4-cylinder, the 4 valves per cylinder, alloy head, magnesium block. That's a real freaking tongue twister if you're dumb. Which this motor was pretty cool because they actually ended up using a heavily revised version of it later on in different McLarens. Bet you didn't know that. It's because they keep it a secret. They don't want you to know. Now, in 1997, Nissan was finally prepared to take this sucker out on the track and see what it had. But unfortunately, they failed the initial inspection. Why, you may ask? There was not enough airtight luggage space in the back of the car. So what they have to do? Well, they had to modify it. Even though they had the best lap times out of anybody else that day, they still couldn't qualify or even compete if they didn't fix what they were doing. So what they had to do is make more room where there wasn't room available. The problem with that is it was around the cooling stuff. So the cooling flow and the cooling air, it all changed. And so nothing was able to be cooled like it was supposed to. This led to the gearbox being a huge failing point on these vehicles because what else other choice did they have? 2 of the R390s actually did not finish the race entirely. But they finished it up just in time, and just as they were ready to race, they had all 3 of the R390s on the track ready to go. Unfortunately, 2 of them did not finish due to this gearbox issue, and the third one, well, it finished, but it finished in 12th place with a completely destroyed transmission. All these holdbacks left Nissan 12th place overall. But now it's Eric Kamas' turn. It's finally his time to wind this thing out and see what it's got. It's 1998. We're coming into a fresh new season with revised everything. They have better aero, more downforce, a different diffuser, a better wing, and most importantly, a little bit better of cooling. Now you gotta remember, they put this car together very quickly, very little time to engineer and test. There were still flaws. Even with all these flaws, they were still able to finish with a beautiful 3rd place run at the end of 1998, putting them on the Le Mans podium. Unfortunately, they were never to race again. That was the last year. You see, Nissan was plagued with different financial issues, and designing this car and making this car was not helping. Especially considering different manufacturers like Porsche, McLaren, Mercedes, Mazda, they were running this town. It was almost impossible for Nissan to compete with these big competitors. Eric's dream of continuing to drive the R390 has now come to a halt. Considering they only made 8 race versions of this car and only 1 for consumers, Eric was out of luck. But with the help of Nissan and 25 years of waiting, Eric himself was finally able to convert one of his race cars into a street legal R390. Finally, after 25 years, Eric would have his dream car and be able to drive it on the streets and track whenever he pleased. Until then, though, he would continue to race for different manufacturers for Le Mans to eventually be able to get his dream car. But what about Nissan? Is that it? No, you silly goose! 2011, Nissan made a comeback with the new Nissan ETR. The new Nissan GTR GT1. The thing was a beast, and it has us all wondering, would we even have the GTR if it wasn't for the R390? I guess we'll never know. At the end of the day, the forgotten R390 is what put Nissan on the podium for Le Mans. And my boy Eric, He got his dream car. So I'd say in all, it's a pretty good win for Nissan. Thank you for watching Cars You Didn't Know Exist, and have a good one.